If Iran flips towards the West, it won't happen all at once. There won't be a dramatic press conference, there won't be an apology, and there sure won't be a flag-raising ceremony in Washington. This will be slow, subtle, strategic, because the regime can't admit failure, not publicly, but it can signal flexibility. It can test reactions, it can plant the seeds of a new posture while pretending nothing's changed. You know Iran, they're good at that. And that process has already begun. Step one is what we're already seeing: quiet diplomacy. European intermediaries, especially from France, Austria, and Switzerland, are once again being used to float trial balloons. New nuclear deal frameworks have been discussed, not publicly, but through private channels. Not because Iran suddenly loves the West, but because its leadership knows the current trajectory ends in collapse. A new deal might not be as ambitious as the JCPOA. It may be focused more narrowly, maybe on oil exports in exchange for inspections, or limited sanctions relief in return for technology access. But the point isn't the deal, it's the direction. Step two is rhetorical softening. We're already seeing a change in tone. The once daily chants of death to America, less prominent. The Friday sermons, less combative. Even the RRGC media outlets have pulled back from the usual hardline language, replacing it with vaguer talk of national interest and strategic balance. It's not a coincidence, it's preparation. The regime is building space to pivot without looking weak to its base. Step three will be controlled economic reform, not full liberalization, but tactical changes, allowing more private sector activity, encouraging foreign capital and joint ventures, opening up select industries like automotive, telecom, and refining to outside partners, particularly those that can bring in Western components quietly through intermediaries. These reforms will be framed as domestic initiatives, not foreign concessions. But make no mistake, they'll be designed to reconnect Iran to Western systems. Step four, strategic distancing from Russia. This one's delicate. Iran can't afford to abandon Moscow publicly. Not why it still needs arms, drones, and diplomatic support. But behind the scenes, expect Iran to gradually reduce its military entanglements with Russia in places like Syria, and limit joint public statements that make Tehran look like a junior partner in Moscow's losing game. The goal will be to rebalance, not flip sides outright, but look more non-aligned and less toxic to Western investors. And finally, step five, diplomatic normalization, one piece at a time. You won't see embassies reopen overnight, but you will see loosened visa restrictions, back-channel oil deals with Southern Europe, quiet re-entry into certain international institutions, and possibly U.S. diplomatic gestures through third parties, like prisoner swaps, humanitarian relief, or low-level joint reforms, will be deniable, reversible, but together, they'll signal a pivot, not toward alliance, but toward survival through engagement. The West may never trust Iran, and Iran may never fully abandon its old slogans, but reality is forcing something more powerful than trust: mutual necessity. And as Iran's internal crisis deepens and its eastern allies continue to disappoint, the road west, however narrow, starts to look like the only way forward. To the team, Iran. If Iran turns west, even partially, the ripple effects won't stay in Tehran. The entire global balance shifts. And not just in the Middle East. We're talking energy markets, great power competition, and the future of America's posture across Asia and Europe. Because here's the thing, Iran isn't just another country in crisis. It's a strategic node, sitting at the crossroads of oil, ideology, and influence. And if it pivots, the consequences will be enormous. Let's start with China. Beijing has spent years trying to lock in Iran as a reliable anti-Western oil partner. They signed a 25-year deal, promised infrastructure, pitched themselves as the new anchor of Tehran's future. But they overpromise and underdeliver. If Iran starts shifting west, even slightly, China loses one of the few rogue state partners it had left in its Belt and Road vision. And that's a big problem for Beijing, because China doesn't just want Iran's oil, it wants leverage. And leverage disappears if Iran starts doing business with Europe again. Then there's Russia. Good old Russia. Moscow is already isolated. Its war in Ukraine has turned it into a global pariah, and one of its few geopolitical wins has been deepening military and economic ties with Iran, if you call that a win. But that window is closing. If Iran begins reducing arms cooperation, limiting drone exports, or even subtly walking back from Moscow's orbit, it isolates Russia even further. And in a post-Ukraine world, that's a major loss for Putin. Now, think about the Gulf states. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain have been cautiously managing relations with Iran, but always with suspicion. If Iran starts opening to the West, it could do two things at once: reduce the risk of war in the region, which benefits everyone economically, force the Gulf monarchies to rethink their own balancing act between Washington and Beijing. Because a Western-leaning Iran shifts the regional game. Suddenly, Tehran isn't just a threat, it becomes a competitor for influence and investment. That means a more complex Middle East, and one where America's leverage might actually grow. Oh my God, let's not get back in the Middle East. Then there's the United States. Washington doesn't trust Iran, and likely never will. But from a strategic standpoint, a neutral or semi-cooperative Iran is far better than a hostile one. It reduces pressure on U.S. bases in Iraq, lowers the risk of Israel-Iran escalation, and opens the door to energy coordination in a time of global volatility. It even puts pressure on America's adversaries, China, Russia, North Korea, by proving that isolation has limits and the West still holds gravitational pull even among former enemies. And finally, the people of Iran. A Western pivot won't solve everything. It won't erase 45 years of mistrust or undo the regime's brutality, but it could open a door to economic opportunity, civil resilience, and long-term change. It could shift the internal power balance away from hardliners and toward pragmatists. It could give Iran's next generation a reason to stay, build, instead of burn. And that, more than anything else, might be the regime's only path to survival. Now, this isn't guaranteed. The pivot might stall, it might be sabotaged, might be reversed at the first sign of Western pressure or domestic backlash. Oh, but if it happens, Iran won't just save itself, it will reshape the map. And for the first time in decades, the world's most volatile region might start looking a little more functional. That's the opportunity, that's the risk, and that's why the world needs to pay attention. Because the next geopolitical shock might come from China or Russia or even Europe. If you're tired of globalist bullshit and ready for straight talk, subscribe to America's Geopolitics. This is Frank. See you next time.